right, let's get straight into it with my panel. Tonight joining me are Sky News contributor Joe Hildebrand and Director of Headline Advisory Andrew Carswell. Fellas, there's a lot to get through. Let's kick it off with this. There has been so much outrage, in many cases, about this man claiming to be a woman, Dylan Mulvaney, who's booked lucrative deals with Nike women and Tampax, despite, of course, being a biological man. But it turns out these companies may not have had a choice. Many virtue signalling corporations are being forced to go woke or risk losing precious corporate equality index points, which are awarded by the human rights group, which is the largest rainbow political lobbying group in the world. Joe, we say go woke, go broke, but you could not go woke and go broke. Is this a terrible decision for corporates around the world?
Yeah, look, to be honest, I think everyone's getting played here, including the trans community. I should say from the outset, my wife works for Equality Australia, which is a group that advocates on these sorts of issues, as well as same-sex issues and intersex issues. But my feeling is that, I mean, there are genuinely important discussions we have to have, like the role of trans women in biological women's sport and where that balance lies and how we can make it inclusive while still making it fair to other athletes. There's serious issues about things like gay conversion therapy, which New South Wales recently announced it would ban. Things like, involuntary gender reassignment of kids that can have terrible, long-lasting voluntary effects. These are really important things that we should be actually talking about in a kind of sensible, grown-up and respectful way. And then when you see sort of corporates thinking, oh, this is a cool little new bandwagon, I'll jump on this, and getting rewarded for it, getting literally points for it, I kind of think the trans community, even though they probably think that they're the ones forcing this change, I think they're actually getting played by these corporates that are clearly jumping on a bandwagon they think will boost their profits, clearly thinking that this might stir up a bit of controversy, which of course is actually bad for the trans community in the broader community because it makes people angry or scared or worried or opposed to it. And of course, it then gives them all these brownie points to say, oh, we're just such a nice corporate citizen devoted to making the world a better place, not actually out there to do what all corporations want to do, which is squeeze a bit of money out of the average consumer. So I think it's all bollocks, quite frankly, Cory.
Very appropriate. Hey, not everyone's getting on the bandwagon though, because a Catholic intellectual group named after Christopher Dawson has been banned from hosting their annual forum at the University of Tasmania because they've dared to have a colloquium entitled Wokery and How to Deal with It. The university was apparently concerned this meeting could discuss the untruthful fact that boys are boys and girls are apparently girls. Andrew, you're being cancelled for talking about basic biology now. Is this more anti-Catholic rhetoric, or is it just something that we've got to adjust to in the world?
Well, Cory, I think these people hate free speech. They hate the contest of ideas. They hate the free flow of information and opinion. And the three core issues that the universities across Australia should be happy to have on their campus. The interesting thing here on this topic in particular, I mean, universities had a go at many Australians, many people that had an issue with climate change for many years and said, look, just follow the science here, believe the science. But when it comes to biology, in this case, they're saying, oh, maybe not follow the science on this one. I think it's an embarrassment that universities are going down this track ever deeper in terms of cancelling opinion, cancelling people that don't have the same opinion, all in the name of exclusivity, but not in the name of exclusivity in terms of opinion and thought.
Yeah, everyone's included, and we've got to preach inclusiveness except those with a different opinion. Joe, they wouldn't have done this to a Muslim group, though. They wouldn't have dared to do that. There would be an outcry. So it's got to be linked to the Catholic nature of the group, isn't it?
Yeah, again, I think why sort of pick a fight on this issue when you don't have to? And why ban someone from expressing their religious beliefs when you could simply debate them or contest them or write a letter to the newspaper or explain why they're wrong? I'm all in on Jesus. I'm a card-carrying Catholic. I can't find anything in the Bible that says that Jesus was opposed to trans people. And in fact, he says some very strange things about traditional families as well, which in the 2,000 years since have been sort of refined or massaged by the church to make it more appropriate. And this is what is the great thing in my mind about Christianity is it adapts to the world around it. And I think the Catholic Church is making and has made already some great leaps forward in terms of being more inclusive. I don't know why trans groups would say, well, you're not allowed to even express these views rather than engage with them.
Mate, there's a new bumper sticker, Joe, for you. All in on Jesus. I reckon you'd sell a few of them. Hey, what about this? What about this? The traditional owners of a multi-million-dollar uranium mine in the Flinders Ranges region, I can't pronounce the name, I'll try, Adnyamanthanta Native Title Group, they're going to get access to key financial documents from the mining companies that operate there. Now, the reason for this is because the Native Title Group received $4 million in 2020 from royalty payments from the companies, but then it was placed into special administration in the same year. Andrew, we've got to ask ourselves, where did this money go? And shouldn't we have some sort of audit trail about where the billions and billions of dollars goes into the Aboriginal industries in this country?
Look, I think these type of issues are quite endemic in native title, and particularly with these type of body corporates. There is nothing, of course, wrong with the royalty system as a theory, as a whole, and it's provided countless millions of a great amount of funding for remote Indigenous communities that helps them with education and health outcomes. But there needs to be a level of transparency here from the top down, from the distribution, from the people that receive it, and then how that is spent in those communities. There is currently not that level of transparency throughout the native title process. So there needs to be a level of reform in native title that ensures that these land use agreements, these native title agreements are fit for purpose, particularly as we come into what is looming as the next mining boom. We need this sorted before we enter this next stage of what could be a great era of prosperity for the country.
And particularly for Aboriginal communities here, Joe, what was explained to me was the royalties go to a central corporation. They're then handed down to a dozen or so other people who then can hand them down to the people that they see fit to deal with. That's obviously not impacting people positively on the ground. It just seems to be contributing to greater problems. So how do we fix it?
Yep. Yeah, clearly the system, obviously, with the various land councils is very piecemeal at best, and it's also very opaque often, which is what is happening here. You have an organisation that apparently is under the auspices of ASIC and therefore not accountable to the actual Indigenous body that oversees its parent company, if I got that right. But again, it's clearly just papers being moved around to try to avoid that kind of transparency and that kind of scrutiny, and clearly it needs to be streamlined. And I just wonder, what could we possibly do to fix this? If only there was a national advisory body to tell the government about these sorts of issues and how they could fix them. I wonder, someone should come up with something like that, shouldn't they?
Oh dear, that's opening up a can of worms, and I tell you now, it'd be a national body would have the same problems, but on steroids, Joe. We'll talk about that another time. No. I got to get onto this. This is bizarre, but it's in some credible news sources. I didn't think it was real when I first saw it. The leader of Tibetan Buddhism, the Dalai Lama, he's asked this boy to hug him. He's asked this boy to kiss him. And then finally, he's asked this boy to suck his tongue.
Who's here? Then I think finally here also. And suck my tongue. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Joe, I'm going back to you. I bet you're happy you're not a Buddhist, that you're happy that you're a Catholic and not a Buddhist. Can you imagine the furor if this was a Catholic priest, for example, asking a young boy to do this? It would be out of control.
Oh, I've got to say, I thought kissing my great aunt Dorothy at Christmas was bad. It's terrible. I think it's terrible. I have to say, I don't think it's sinister because it just looks like someone who's lost their marbles. I think the Dalai Lama is 87 years old now, and he's on to about his 96th life. So I think he's someone who's just lost the plot. Obviously, if he was seriously trying to groom a kid like this, as sickening as that thought may be, it wouldn't be done in front of all those cameras and microphones. But it's just not on. I think it's time he took a leaf out of Pope Benedict's book and maybe just retired.
I think that might be a good idea. Andrew, the people in this video were cheering. How could you be cheering on this sort of behaviour under any circumstances?
Well, I think it's just one of those awkward situations where you probably don't know what to do. I mean, the Dalai Lama fancies himself as a bit of a, ad hoc comedian. I think he just got it completely wrong in this case. I mean, the kissing alone was bizarre, but the final statement was a bit grim.
Yeah. Yeah, a bit grim, there's an understatement, that's for sure. All right, a Financial Review columnist was arrested in broad daylight in Sydney after he was seen kicking a dog outside Chemist Warehouse. He was arrested for animal cruelty charges, but the columnist, Aaron Patrick, said the pit bull cross was attacking him, not the other way around, but it still had to go to court. So, Joe, I don't know if you know this chap at all, but animal cruelty for kicking a dog that might or possibly be a threat to you, it seems a bit much.
It was a preemptive strike, Cory. It was a preemptive strike. I don't know, Aaron. I have to say, I obviously am familiar with his work. He's a very high-profile journalist. Look, it's impossible to know what's happened until this has sort of worked its way through the justice system. But I've got to say that you just don't kick a man's dog. It's not the Sydney way. And even though this is the most Sydney story of all time, everyone knows that when a dog comes running up to you, you quietly wet your pants but pretend you're not afraid. And then you sort of pat it as though you knew that everything was going to be fine. And then you duck into the nearest Salvo store and get yourself a new pair of trousers.
You certainly do. I've got a couple of dogs and they'll lick people to death. Andrew, this is a pretty tough gig, isn't it? Go to court for kicking a dog because you thought it was a threat, though.
Well, Cory, you're asking us to adjudicate between a heavy-hitting newspaper columnist that that loves to get a pen out and assassinate some characters, usually right. And a guy that owns a tattoo parlour and has a pit bull as a dog. I'm staying on the fence on this one, if you don't mind.
At least the tattoo parlour operator has some respect in the community.
That's all right. A bucket load of ink to denigrate your character, or a tattoo owner with a pit bull. Yeah, tough choice there.